I lost 50 pounds in 2018, and ever since I've helped thousands of men to lose weight and keep it off for good. And in this video, I'm going to break down by tier which diet works best. So let's start with C tier. The worst diet, in my opinion, and to be fair, based on science, is the vegan diet. Now, I know this isn't going to be popular with some folks, but I'm not here to attack you. I am just here to tell you the facts. Now, in principle, the vegan diet is very straightforward. All you have to do is cut out all animal products. So no meat, no fish, no eggs, no dairy, just plants. Now, on the face of it, I wouldn't blame you if you thought that sounds healthy, but let's break it down. On the pro side of the list, the vegan diet is going to be very high in fiber, vitamins, and antioxidants, which is obviously very good for your overall health. And many people, truth be told, tend to lose quite a lot of weight on the vegan diet because plant-based food tends to be lower in calories and higher in volume, so it keeps you feeling fuller for longer. It's also been linked to better heart health, lower cholesterol, lower blood pressure, and overall a lower risk of heart disease. And of course, the main benefit and the main reason that I think most vegans are vegans in the first place is the environmental and the ethical benefits. You're not slaughtering animals and you've got a lower carbon footprint. But, and unfortunately it is a big but, the biggest problem with the vegan diet is it's very hard to get enough high quality protein in. Now you might be sitting there thinking, yeah, but I don't need protein, I'm not a bodybuilder. But that isn't really the main point of protein. Protein, ironically enough, actually comes from the ancient Greek word protos, which means first. So you could argue in one way, at least the ancient Greeks did, that it's the most important of the three macronutrients. It's not enough to just hit your protein goal for the day. You want to be making sure that you're getting high quality, complete sources of protein that have all 9 of the essential amino acids that your body can't naturally synthesize. In almost every single case, the highest quality protein, the ones that have all of those 9 amino acids, come from meat, fish, dairy, and eggs, which is obviously all the stuff you can't eat if you're following a strict vegan diet. A lot of the plant-based proteins, particularly these days where they're becoming more manufactured rather than natural plant-based food, they lack these essential amino acids. So like I say, I want to reiterate this point because it's really important. It's not about getting enough protein in, it's getting enough high quality protein in and doing it consistently. And this isn't just for the bodybuilders, this is for your everyday man and woman, whether you're 16 years old or 80 years old. In fact, there's even an argument to say that as you get older, protein becomes even more important because it stops a process which is called sarcopenia. I mean, we're going deep down a rabbit hole, which I wasn't planning on going down today, but essentially that's the breakdown of muscle tissue. And again, you might be thinking, well, why is that important when I'm 60 years old? I don't need to have massive biceps. Well, no, it is very important because you see the protein builds the lean muscle, and the lean muscle is what helps support your joints, your ligaments, your tendons, and stops you from getting hurt when you fall over. But then there's also the nutrient deficiency. So in particular, you've got vitamin B12, calcium, iron, and omega-3s. Now, you either have to work really hard to get them into your diet, or you have to rely on supplements. And then of course, let's not forget, it's just also a little bit socially awkward. Like, remember, I have tried every single one of these diets. Admittedly, I only tried the vegan diet for like a week because it was next to impossible to stick to, and I felt terrible when I was doing it. And you could argue that I didn't try it for long enough, fair enough, but yeah, it just wasn't for me. But what I did find is when I was eating out or traveling or just like going to like a barbecue, it's next to impossible to just eat vegan food. So you end up just standing in the corner with a glass of water and looking like a bit of a weirdo. You just don't want to be that guy. And the point of this whole video, and you're going to come on to see this, is that you don't need to be that guy. And to make it even worse, and this has actually happened even more so in the last couple of years than when I was doing vegan, which was like 5 years ago when it was cool. I got completely sucked into it. Vegan food has become incredibly expensive, and that's because, well, there's 2 reasons. One, it's expensive to make this food, and secondly, it's expensive to sell it. It costs a lot for these companies to market this food to the consumers, so they pass on that cost to the end consumer. So the vegans, the ones who are actually buying it, the ones who are trying to be healthy, the ones who are trying to help the environment, the ones who are trying to be ethical because they don't want animals to die, which of course I completely understand and respect, they're the ones who are actually paying a higher tax, if anything, for being vegan. So it just doesn't make sense. And I hate to be the person to tell you this if you are vegan and you're watching this video and you're like, yeah, but I love being a vegan because, you know, I'm saving the animals and all this stuff. Well, unfortunately, the scientists have just found out that plants are actually sentient beings, which essentially means they're alive. So vegans are kind of murderers too. Sorry. Okay, so that's the vegan diet. Basically advise you to avoid it under every single circumstance going in the world. Next up, staying in the C tier, we're talking about the keto diet. So keto is all about super high fat, moderate protein, and very low carbs. When I say very low carbs, we're talking like 20 to 50 grams a day, just enough to keep your body in ketosis, essentially, where your body is burning the fat for fuel rather than the carbs, rather than the sugar for fuel. The pros, well, the pros are pretty obvious. You will experience rapid weight loss if you follow the keto diet. You see, when your body stops burning carbs for fuel and starts burning fat instead, when you enter ketosis, you lose a lot of water weight very quickly. And this happens because when you're eating carbs, like a normal person, your body converts those carbs into a simple sugar called glucose. And the glucose is used to give you energy to do stuff. But when you eat too many carbs, which most people do, then it stores that energy as something called glycogen. Now, water bonds with glycogen. It can bond with quite a lot of water, right? So when you stop eating carbs and start just eating fat, what you're going to see in the first week or so is your body isn't even entering ketosis, right? It's not even burning that fat for fuel. All it's doing is burning through the stored glycogen. Now, of course, it depends how much glycogen you've got stored up, but it tends to be that you can probably go through that glycogen in 2 to 3 days. Once you've burnt through that glycogen, the water in your body has nothing to hold on to. So you're going to burn through that water weight very, very fast. You're going to lose a lot of it very quickly. I'm talking like, for an average guy who's maybe like 200 pounds, you could lose 3 kg. So we're talking like near enough 8 pounds in the space of 2 to 3 days. So it feels like you're getting this amazing win and you think it's because you're on this keto diet. It's not. It's just because you've lowered your carbs right down to essentially zero. You might be thinking, okay, great. Well, I'm just going to cut my carbs. I'm going to lose weight really fast and I'll keep losing weight. It doesn't really work that way because once you've depleted your body of water, you've not got any more water weight to lose, if that makes sense. So that's when you start burning through the fat and then you'll start to see the weight loss really slow down to half a pound or a pound a week. And that's fine. That's a great rate of fat loss. But when you've gone from the first week of burning 8, 10 pounds, I've seen some guys lose 15 pounds in 1 week, which is insane. And then the next week you're burning 1, even though you're still going in the right direction, it feels like you're failing, right? So I prefer, and we'll go on and talk about this a little bit later, but a much more sustainable approach to fat loss. Because I think most people who go on keto, they don't really understand what they're doing. They don't really realize that it's not the fact that they're on keto, it's just that they've dropped their carbs, essentially. And also, the other thing I should say at this point is most people who think they're doing keto aren't doing keto because they haven't actually lowered their carbs to a low enough point. They've lowered their carbs, but they're just doing a low carb diet. They're not actually in ketosis, which is the whole point of going on the keto diet, where you burn fat for fuel. But saying that, the other huge benefit of ketosis, and it is a very valid diet for a couple of groups of people, which I'll go on to talk about in a second, is that it's very good for stabilizing and even lowering your blood sugar levels, which can be fantastic for insulin resistance and diabetics as well. So keto diet in the short term can be very beneficial for bringing those levels down. The other group of people who the keto diet can be very useful for is epileptics. It's been a lot of scientific studies proving that this can actually reduce the intensity and the amounts of fits that epileptic people have. And probably the biggest benefit long term is if you actually do get yourself to a point where you're eating low enough carbs and you are burning the fat and you are actually in ketosis, then those people, if they can maintain it, and some people can, they just operate better on low carb, that's cool. They often report having much more stable blood sugar levels. And what that looks like in real life is you don't have energy spikes and crashes. So you're not sitting there at 3 p.m. like going into a coma essentially, which can of course be very useful. You can experience more mental clarity and focus. Now, you have to be a little bit careful because more often than not, what that actually is your brain raising your cortisol level, your stress hormone, because it wants you to go out and eat carbs. Your carbs are our body's preferred source of fuel. And I think this is the biggest misunderstanding and probably the biggest negative of the keto diet, aside from the psychological effects, which we just spoke about, how like you can lose a lot of weight very quickly, but then that weight loss is going to slow down. The biggest net con, essentially, of the keto diet is that your brain is the most metabolic organ in the body. It burns the most calories of everything that you do. Like your brain will burn anything from 500 to 1,000 calories a day, depending on what you're doing, how stressed out you are, how many tasks you're jumping between. Like, for example, if you're recording a YouTube video and then the next minute you're speaking to a client or a friend on the phone, and then the next minute you're learning how to cook, and then the next minute you're learning Japanese, that's 4 very different parts of your brain. It has to like change gear a little bit like how a car has to. So that requires cognitive effort. So the harder you're pushing your brain, the more calories you're going to burn. And your brain prefers to run on glucose. It prefers to run on sugar. So it can, of course, run on ketones, which is what you're burning when you're in ketosis. But most of the scientific studies have only proven that you get about 70% of the efficiency running on ketones versus running on glucose. And I don't know about you, but I need my cognitive function. I want it to be at 100% all the time. So what I find that I'm better off doing is managing my blood sugar levels by just making sure that I'm not gorging on hyperpalatable carbs, essentially. And another big con of the keto diet that's worth noting is the nutrient deficiencies. I don't know if you just saw that lightning, by the way. We're having a crazy storm here today. But yeah, you're not eating things like fruit, so you're not getting a lot of the vitamins and the minerals, because fruit is sugar. It's broken down into something called fructose. Of course, you're not eating a lot of vegetables, and you're definitely not eating grains. So you're going to miss out on a lot of vitamins, minerals, nutrients, antioxidants, loads of different things that are very important for the function or the healthy function of your body. And let's be honest, the biggest con of the keto diet is that it's just not sustainable for 99% of the population. I mean, one slice of bread, one slice of cake, one cheat meal of basically any kind, and you're knocked out ketosis. And it takes a fair bit of time, 7 to 14 days, maybe even 21 days, we're talking 3 weeks here, to get yourself back in. So is it really worth it? Like I say, the weight loss that you get at the beginning isn't because you're on the keto diet. It's just because you've lowered your carbs and all you're doing is basically peeing out some water. Could a lot of people benefit from eating less carbs? Absolutely. Do they need to go as low as ketosis levels? No. All right, moving up to B tier, and this tier belongs exclusively to our good friends in the carnivore community. The carnivore diet is just as extreme, if not maybe more extreme than the vegan diet. However, I have rated it in this tier, the B tier, rather than the C tier, so higher than the vegan diet, for several reasons. You see, I think the vegan diet does actually give you a little bit more variety, which is why I say the carnivore diet is probably more extreme than it. However, I would rather you be eating the high quality sources of protein, the meat, the fish, the dairy, and the eggs. But I put it in the B tier because even though it's a terrible idea to cut out fiber, veg, and carbs, I think if you're looking to lose some weight, which I would imagine you probably are if you're watching a video like this, I think the carnivore diet is going to serve you better in the short term than the vegan diet would. And again, this comes back to the quality of the nutrients and the quality of the protein that you're going to get, but also the fact that the high protein content, which you're going to get from the carnivore diet, absolutely inevitably, because you're essentially eating near enough a 100% protein diet with a little bit of fat and a little bit of carbs. But that protein is also going to help to keep you feeling full for longer. It's going to stabilize your blood sugar levels. It's going to improve your immune system. Again, there's so many benefits to protein outside of like getting jacked, getting massive, being a bodybuilder. It's much more about helping your overall health. Protein is involved in the creation of every single cell in your body, and not just the creation, but the healthy function of those cells. So if you're lacking on protein and lacking particularly on high quality protein, which you do get from the carnivore diet, you're going to be really struggling. And there is a lot of nutrients in fish, meat, dairy, and eggs. So it is a relatively complete diet. But I just think there's a big, strong argument to say that you're missing out on quite a lot, particularly on the fiber side of things, by not having veg, by not having several grains and other carbs like that. Saying that, I'm jumping around a little bit here on this one, so apologies if you can't keep up. But going back to the pros, a huge benefit of the carnivore diet is it's so straightforward. Like, you don't need to be tracking any calories. Like, you know exactly what you can and you can't eat. It's pretty clear cut. Just eat meat. I mean, pretty simple. And like I say, it's going to work for weight loss. High protein is going to keep you full. Basically, zero carbs means, like the keto diet, you're going to lose a lot of weight fast. But again, it's going to be more like water weight. And of course, just like the keto diet, the big benefit there is that it gets to stabilize your blood sugar levels. And a lot of people, including, very high profile people, have also reported a serious reduction in the amount of inflammation in your body. So if you are suffering from chronic illness or chronic diseases, then one of the best things that you can do is reduce the amount of inflammation in your body. However, I would argue that the best way to do that is not necessarily to go on a carnivore diet. It's to stabilize your blood sugar. It's to get rid of the visceral fat. It's to bring your body weight down. It's to get outside more, to get more sunlight, to get more steps, to get more fresh air, to strength train, to prioritize your sleep. More of lifestyle interventions than just go, I'll just eat meat. Like, yes, that might work, but that one thing in isolation is not going to change your life. Now, interestingly, and again, I'm only speaking from personal experience here, when I went on the carnivore diet and I did it for maybe 2 months, my digestive issues got worse, not better. But that might be because I went from eating 30, 40 grams of fiber a day to essentially zero. And I found, which is quite funny, we talk about constipation in children all the time, right? If you're a parent, you're like, yeah, my kid's constipated. That's why he's a little bit annoyed today. We never talk about it in adults, but it's exactly the same thing. My theory is, right, so when I posted a video quite similar to this about 6 months ago, obviously you're getting the updated version with the new science and new opinions and the fact that I've worked with and probably had 100 people in those 6 months, is that I thought I would get a lot more stick from the vegans. I thought the vegans would come after me, right? Because they used to be a very vocal minority, let's say. Nowadays, I was surprised. Most of the negative comments that I got in that video came from the carnivore crew. I think a lot of them are constipated. I think a lot of them are angry because they haven't been to the toilet for a fair while. And this, to me, is one of the biggest cons of the carnivore diet. Some people say it improves their digestion. Great. Again, I think those people is probably the ones who were eating terribly before and they're now just eating less processed food. They're losing weight. So of course their baseline was at minus 100. Now we're getting them back to 0, which is 100% improvement. But if someone like me, you're already relatively healthy and you want to try and get little marginal gains, you're going from 98 to 100. I don't think your digestion is going to be improved by going on the carnivore diet. I think you're probably going to see, like I saw, your digestion is going to get worse. And of course, no fruit, no veg means you're missing out on vitamin C. It means you're missing out on antioxidants. I mean, there's plenty of vitamins and minerals that you can get from meat, fish, eggs, dairy. I'm not denying that whatsoever. And I eat a lot of meat, fish, eggs, and dairy. I love it. I talk about it all the time in a lot of my videos. But I would just rather you throw in a little bit of fiber, a little bit of fruit, a little bit of veg, and of course, some carbs to get the old brain going properly. Plus, let's be honest, unless you live on a farm, meat, fish, dairy, eggs, it's all pretty expensive these days. Before we move up to A tier, if you're enjoying the video, do me a very small favor and just tap the subscribe button. It should be underneath the video somewhere around here. We are so close to 5,000 subs and I would absolutely love it if we could hit that milestone before the end of February. So if you're already subscribed, thank you so much for your support. And if you're not, what are you doing with your life? Like, seriously, I'm joking. No pressure whatsoever, but I would really appreciate it if you could just tap that button. It's going to cost you nothing. It's going to take you 2 seconds. And if you really hate me after like a month, then just block me or something. All right, we're kicking off A tier with the paleo diet. So the paleo diet is all about eating like our ancestors. So what this means in practice is that we're having lots of meat, lots of fish, lots of fruit, lots of veg, lots of nuts, and we're making a conscious effort to cut out processed food. So on the face of it, all sounds great. However, what you're also needing to cut out if you want to follow the paleo diet strictly is legumes, is grains, and also dairy. So what are the pros of the paleo diet? Well, first and foremost, the biggest one without a question is that you're eating a lot of whole, nutrient-dense foods, which means you're getting plenty of vitamins, minerals, and of course, nutrients. What it also means as a pro is that you're not having many empty calories. All the calories that you are eating are going to a good cause. And of course, because you're getting a lot of fish, a lot of meat, it's very high in protein and good quality protein at that. So it's going to keep you feeling full for longer. And it's the same with the fiber. You're going to be eating plenty of fruit and plenty of veg, which means your digestion is going to be on good form and your gut health is going to get a little bit of a boost. And another big benefit that you're going to get from the paleo diet is the massive reduction of inflammation in your body. And this is going to come from the fact that you're just not eating the processed junk food anymore. So a lot of people report that they're far less bloated and have much better digestion. Cons, well, we are eliminating grains and we're eliminating legumes, which obviously means you're taking a lot of carbs out of your diet. So it's going to be harder for you to sustain a good amount of energy, particularly again in your brain. And it's also expensive, man. We're talking grass-fed meats. We're talking wild salmon. We're talking organic veggies. This stuff's amazing. And if you've got the resources and you've got the access to it, of course, I encourage you to eat it. But a lot of people just can't follow this diet properly because it's expensive. Let's not forget, like all of these diets, it is restrictive. So bread, nope. Rice, gone. Oatmeal, no chance. Staying in the A tier, and we're talking about the Mediterranean diet. So the Mediterranean diet is all about balance. So unlike the paleo diet, with the Mediterranean diet, we're reintroducing legumes and grains. We're also keeping the fruit and veg. So that's 4 good ticks there. However, we are moderating the amount of certain meats that we have. So things like poultry and then of course fish. But the downside for a lot of people is we are really limiting the amount of red meat and the amount of sweets. So big pro, this is one of the best diets out there for your heart health. Healthy fats, antioxidants, fiber, you name it, it's got it. It's also pretty balanced and yeah, I'd say fairly sustainable. The main focus with the Mediterranean diet, I think, is 2 things. I think one is the idea of moderation and balance, which if you go down to Southern Europe, which is actually where I live in Southern Spain, you will notice that people aren't tending to gorge on food or alcohol. And the other big thing about this diet is the emphasis on whole nutrient-dense foods. One of the funniest things I found when I moved to Spain is how hard it is to find like a McDonald's or a Burger King or anything like that. It's very rare to see junk and fast food. You see, food in the Mediterranean, it's much more about bringing a family together. A lot of families will still eat their main meal, their dinner, all together as a unit. Now, studies have shown that this diet is linked to longevity. I take that a little bit with a pinch of salt because I think there's lifestyle factors in the Mediterranean, and I can tell you firsthand because I live here, that I think have a bigger effect than the diet. One of the biggest ones being the exposure to sunlight. We're very lucky down here that we get like 300 days a year of blue sky and sunshine. Ironically, we're having a massive storm today whilst I record this video. But for the most part, it's beautiful weather. It's fresh air. We live by the sea. People are a bit more relaxed, more friendly. I think those lifestyle factors have a bigger effect on the longevity rather than the diet itself. But absolutely, the diet contributes towards it. The biggest thing I would say, though, like I said, I've said it again, I'll say it now, is the balance and the fact the focus on the whole nutrient-dense food. So just cutting out the processed junk and not gorging on stuff. The Japanese, or a part of Japan called Okinawa, is a blue zone, which is one of the areas of the world that they've identified has the most centenarians, so the most people who live over the age of 100, right? And this area, Okinawa, they adopted something called Harihachi-bu, which is this Japanese philosophy. Apologies if you're Japanese, I'm absolutely butchering this. But essentially means you eat till you're 80% full rather than 100% full. Now, in the UK, where I was brought up, we were taught to finish our plate. I think this comes from our grandparents' generation where they were on rations. It was World War II, and they were essentially told that food is a luxury, any food. So whatever is put on your plate, you eat it. Nowadays, we are very lucky in this generation that for the most of us, we don't have a shortage of food. We can go to the supermarket, which is 5 minutes away, wherever you are, and you can grab anything you want. Of course, food is expensive these days. Of course, we have a cost of living crisis. But for the most part, less people are starving than they were 50 years ago. So this idea that we're brought up to finish whatever is on your plate, and I think it's probably the same in America, can't say for sure because I'm not American and I've never lived that, is that you finish what is on your plate. And I think this is where it comes from. Whereas in Japan, their philosophy has always just been you don't eat like an idiot, basically. You just eat the amount that you actually need and then you leave it. Cons, well, similar to the paleo diet, similar to a lot of these diets, it's, even though it might not be restricted, this one, it can be expensive. We're talking about, buying whole nutrient-dense food, fish and meats and stuff like that. And unfortunately, these days, that stuff is all pretty expensive. And one big thing about the Mediterranean diet is it requires a lot of meal prep. It requires time, because we're not just talking about like meals that can be knocked together quite quickly. We're talking about things that, they have to be like, what's the word? Marinated and all this. I mean, I'm a nutritionist. I don't even know these words. Do you know what I mean? Like, they have to be left out overnight and seasoned. That was the word I was going for. A lot of people just don't have the time for that stuff. So it's nice. It's great. Sounds great. But a lot of people are put off for it because it's just not that convenient. And I think one of the unspoken rules, I should say, guidelines maybe, of the Mediterranean diet is the moderation of alcohol. Because we haven't spoken about it today, but one of the biggest detrimental factors in a lot of people's diet is their alcohol intake, both from a calorie perspective and the damage that it can do to your body, to your gut, to your nervous system, to your endocrine system, your hormones, all of these things. If you come down to Spain, if you go to Italy, all these places in the Mediterranean, you will notice that 99% of people are having a glass of wine or a beer. But if you go to the UK, if you go to the United States, if you go to Canada, it's pass me a crate of beers or a bottle of wine. Like, they have a very different relationship with alcohol. So it's not necessarily a rule of the Mediterranean diet, but it's like an unspoken guideline that you don't get drunk, basically. So as a result of that, you save a ton of calories, you're not hungover the next day, you're more active, you're more driven, you feel better in yourself, you sleep better, you get up, you move more, the sun's out. Again, I don't think it's the diet by itself that is helping people to stay in amazing shape, but it is definitely an A-tier diet because it has some fantastic principles. Next on the list when it comes to the A-tier diets is intermittent fasting. So technically speaking, even though we're not cutting out any foods, we are designating a eating window. So I would still class this as a diet. Most people, the way they follow intermittent fasting is they'll eat between midday and 8 p.m. They have an 8-hour eating window, and then they have 16 hours when they aren't eating. Now, newsflash for you. Every single human being in the world intermittent fasts every single day, because whether you sleep 6 hours or 8 hours, you are not eating while you are asleep. So everyone is intermittent fasting. Now, if you are doing it purposefully and waking up and not eating for the first 4 to 6 hours of the day, depending on what time you wake up, then of course you are doing it a bit more consciously. You are shrinking your eating window, and the biggest pro of that is it's going to be harder for you to overconsume on your calories. From that perspective, it's a great natural weight loss intervention that doesn't really require too much thinking, doesn't require calorie tracking, and it works for a lot of people. A lot of people just aren't hungry in the morning. In fact, true story, when I was a kid, my mum basically used to force me to eat breakfast. And I remember getting on the school bus every single day and feeling sick. Funnily enough, it's completely flipped now. I'm 37 now and I love breakfast. I struggle to go past like 9, 10 a.m. without eating. So really, when you break it down, intermittent fasting for the vast majority of people is just skipping breakfast. It doesn't sound as sexy if you called your diet, I'm on the skipping breakfast diet. So I understand if it's a marketing thing, they have to call it something cool like intermittent fasting. I don't know why I did that, but you know what I mean? They have to kind of make it sound edgy and like superhero-y. A lot of people who are like really hardcore intermittent fasters will tell you that they're activating autophagy, which is like healing them and they're amazing, they're superheroes. And it's not true. Listen, you absolutely can activate autophagy. And of course that can have incredible powers. It tends to be that you need to fast for 36, 48, 72 hours to even get close to that. So intermittent fasting where you're not eating for 16 hours is doing nothing. Of course, big pro, again, like a lot of these diets, is going to help to stabilize your blood sugar levels. So one of the biggest common factors you'll find amongst these diets is that they are help to stabilize your blood sugar levels and help bring your hunger hormones, which are called leptin and ghrelin, back into balance. So actually, let me say a little bit on that. You have two hunger hormones. You have leptin, which essentially dictates how full you feel. Now, in an ideal world, you want that to be nice and high because the higher your leptin is, the less like you are to like grab everything in sight. Then you have ghrelin, which works against leptin. So your ghrelin hormone is dictating how hungry you are. You ideally want your ghrelin level to be nice and low because the higher it is, the hungrier you are, the more likely your discipline, all this motivation, willpower is going to go completely out the window and you eat whatever you want. So when you go on one of these diets, the biggest benefit you're going to get past 2 weeks, I think it takes about 14 days really to kind of do this stuff, is the stabilization of your blood sugar levels and the balancing out of your hunger hormones. Once you push past those first 2 weeks, whichever of these diets that you are on, you're going to find it easier to stick to. Not only because your hormones have been brought back into balance, because your insulin levels have been brought down, your blood sugar's been stabilized, but also because you've pushed past the point where you've had cravings. And the other big benefit is after 2 weeks, as long as you are doing it correctly, you should have experienced some kind of weight loss, some kind of result. And that helps you to build momentum, which helps you to keep moving forward and keeps you motivated. The biggest downsides of intermittent fasting, well, pretty obvious, right? It's going to be hunger. Again, not everybody experiences this. Some people go on intermittent fasting and they're like, I literally just stopped eating breakfast and I lost like 50 pounds. Great, happy days. If it works for you, I'm all for it. But I don't know about you. Whenever I get told I can't do something, I just want to do it more. So your eating window goes from being 12 to 8 p.m. and then suddenly you're having a snack at 11 a.m. or you're having a late night drink at 11 p.m. Or think about it from a social perspective. Like you go out for dinner and 8:01, sorry waiter, turn around, I'll come back tomorrow. It's not going to work, is it? So like all of these diets, I'd encourage you to apply some common sense. What I'd also encourage you to do if you are going to do intermittent fasting is move your eating window earlier in the day, because what people don't realize is that digestion, like thinking, is a metabolic process, and any metabolic process in your body requires energy, and our energy is calories. So when we are digesting food, and it depends, depending on the type of food you are eating and digesting, your heart rate is elevated because your body is having to work to burn calories. And when your heart rate is elevated, you can't sleep. Well, you can't sleep well at least, because you sleep well when your resting heart rate is brought down to a resting level. So this is why I discourage people from eating late at night. I actually normally encourage my clients to use the 3-2-1 rule, which is where you stop eating 3 hours before you go to bed. You stop drinking water or, well, anything, the alcohol, anything, 2 hours before bed. And you come off your screens, whether it's phones or TVs or laptops or whatever it might be, an hour before bed. And the biggest one of that is probably the eating, because it gives your body time to digest the food, to process it, and to then bring your heart rate back down to a resting level. So what I encourage people to do is, if they are just cutting out intermittent fasting because they've been told it's the miracle cure and they actually are hungry in the morning, simple. Move your eating window to earlier in the day. Maybe be hungry for a couple of hours, because we all have we can all do that. And then eat from 9 till, what would that be, like 4, 5 p.m., something like that. If you really want to go hard on it, you could go like 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. or something like that. I mean, there's that guy, what's his name? Brian Johnson, the guy who's trying to live to like 3,000 years old or something. I don't think he will. But one of the things he does is, which I agree with, is he eats early in the morning and he stops eating. I think he stops eating at 11 a.m. Now, that's too extreme. The guy's a billionaire. He can do whatever he wants. I'm not saying follow him. But I do agree with him on the principle that if you're going to eat in the day, eat earlier. And then last on the list in the A tier is the Atkins diet. So the Atkins diet is actually one that's kind of gone out of fashion, but I think it's a pretty good idea. It's relatively low carb and it's high protein. So because you're dropping your carbs down, you're going to experience that fast weight loss, but because you're also keeping your protein levels high, you're going to feel fuller for longer. And by cutting out the carbs, you're more than likely cutting out the processed food and the junk. So you're going to improve your gut health, your digestion, your mood, your endocrine system, your sleep, all of that stuff. Cons, well, it's obviously pretty restrictive because we're going to quite drastically lower our carbs down. Now, we're not talking keto level lowering our carbs, but we are going to say that for most people, you're probably going to be eating half the amount of carbs that you normally do. And you have to be a little bit more tactical with the Atkins diet in terms of which carbs you are still eating. Ideally, you still want to be eating fruit, you still want to be eating veg. It's more the processed stuff that you want to be lowering down. And of course, the other big con is that most people don't understand what we've just talked about today, which hopefully now makes sense to you, is that when you start reintroducing the carbs, your weight is going to go back up because your water weight is going to go back up. And again, that's not a bad thing. Like you want to be hydrated all of the time. So I think it's probably just an education gap more than anything. That being said, for a short-term 6-8 week thing, I think it's pretty palatable. I think it's very healthy. I wouldn't say it's extreme, it's restrictive, but not to any great extent. So those are the most popular diets out there. Well, at least the ones that I know about. But if I had to pick one of those diets to go on, I wouldn't recommend any of them. You see, what I would do is combine elements from a few of them and create my own diet. So I'd eat plants, but I'd also eat meat. I'd have protein, carbs, and fat. And if I was hungry in the morning, which, like I said, most days I am, I'd eat. You don't even really want to be on a diet. Why? Well, because they don't work. In fact, the latest science on this shows that 95% of men who go on a diet not only end up quitting, but actually end up regaining the weight, and some of them even go on to gain more weight. And that's because all of the diets that we've talked about today and all the other ones that we haven't spoken about today are restrictive in some way, shape, or form. And like I touched on, that goes against human nature. We always want what we can't have. So the best diet for you, the only S-tier diet, the one that's actually going to work, is the one that you can stick to. Let's take Carnivore, for example. In this video, I gave it a B grade, but for you, it might be an S. Now, my B grade is based on scientific literature and my own personal experience, but none of that matters if you enjoy it and it helps you get your results. It's not my place to tell you how to eat. This is a free society, or at least last time I checked it was, and you're a fully grown adult. All I can do is present you with the data and tell you what's worked for hundreds, if not thousands of men and women who I've helped in the last 6 years. So you want to know your numbers. You can eat 1 meal a day, you can eat 5 meals a day. You can have paleo, vegan, carnivore, Atkins, or anything in between. If you want to lose weight and you're not in a calorie deficit, it's not going to happen. And then you want to attack your deficit from both sides. So that doesn't mean going on some crazy restricted diet where you're only eating 1,000 calories a day. What that really looks like for people who actually want sustainable results is moderating your calorie intake, making sure you're in a deficit, but then also moving more, trying to live a more active life. And then, like I said, make sure you're having protein, carbs, and fat, because all three of your macronutrients play an essential role in you living a healthy life. Your protein helps to fill you up, stabilize your blood sugar, supports your immune system. Your carbs are your body's preferred source of energy, and your fat also supports your immune system, but it also supports your endocrine system, your hormone function. So that means you want to be eating lean meat, fish, eggs, and dairy to get those complete sources of protein, but you also want to be eating plants, fruits, veg to get the vitamins, the minerals, the antioxidants, and all that good stuff there. And rather than being super restrictive, just follow the 80-20 rule. So eat 80% of your food for function and 20% for fun, because it's going to be the 20% that you're eating for fun that's going to keep you in the game. You don't really want a diet. You want to build a lifestyle. And that lifestyle isn't going to come from never being able to have bread again. All you want to do, 80% function, 20% fun. Find treats, find snacks that you can fit into your calories every single day that keep you sane and stop you binging at the weekends. And then track your calories. I cannot emphasize this enough. Most people are put off by the idea of it because they think it's some kind of life sentence. It's not at all. It's a little bit like going on a diet. You're going to do it for 6 weeks, you're going to do it for 8 weeks, except this time around, when you track your calories and you do it properly, diligently, every single day for 6 to 8 weeks, You're going to learn so much. It's honestly, I think it should be taught to kids in school. It's a life lesson. And once you've done it for 6 to 8 weeks, you look at food in a completely different way because you start to be able to eyeball it and you start to understand, right, that's got 20 grams of protein, that's got 500 calories. And the other big thing when it comes to tracking your calories is that you're making your decisions based on data, based on logic and rationale, rather than emotion, because we all have very emotional relationships with food. But when we don't get the result that we want, it's easy to blame certain things. Oh, I missed my eating window. Oh, it's because I had that carb. It's not. It's just because you're not making your decisions based on logic, based on data. And the other thing I'd encourage you to do if you're trying to lose some weight right now is to weigh yourself every single day. Now, the first thing this is going to do is expose you to the law of exposure, funnily enough. And that's very powerful because a lot of people have a fear of jumping on the scales and seeing the number that's blinking back at them having gone up. And they think, oh God, I failed. Oh, I can't do it. And then they hide the scales away and they never look at them again. That's not the way to do this. Face into your fears. Weigh yourself every day. The power that you're going to find here is you're going to see how much your weight fluctuates, not just day to day, but hour to hour. And as soon as you start to see that fluctuation, as soon as you expose yourself to the scales every single day, you're going to start removing the emotional attachment that you have to it. The faster you do that, the less that you are going to care about your actual weight. Because, newsflash for you, your weight is literally just your gravitational pull to this planet. If you were on the moon right now, you would weigh 16% of what you do on Earth. It's a number. It means nothing. And then rinse and repeat. Be consistent, because nothing changes overnight and nothing changes in 2 weeks either. If you're going to do something, commit to it, I would say, for 8 to 12 weeks. And whatever you do, don't focus on the speed that you are going at. Focus on the trajectory. Make sure that you're going in the right direction. And this is where it ties back in with the data. If you're tracking your calories and you're seeing your weight going down by about a pound or two each week, you know you're on the right path. Then it becomes a lot easier. Then it becomes a lot more sustainable. And then guess what? You almost can run this diet on autopilot. Because what I want you to really take away from this video is that you've got so many diets to pick from, and they're probably inventing more in some back room as we speak. But any of them that put you under some form of restriction, whatever it may be, whether it's time restricted, whether it's food group restriction, whatever it might be, the amount of meals you can eat in a day, it doesn't matter. It's just not going to be sustainable for your lifetime. And that is what I'm interested in. I'm not interested in helping you to achieve something in 4 weeks and 6 weeks and say, John lost 20 pounds in 3 weeks. No, that's not the game here. The game is John created a healthier diet and a better lifestyle, and now he's happy and he can live forever. Well, not live forever, but you know what I mean. The best diet is the one that you can stick to, and dare I say, it's the one that you can enjoy. Something that enables you to have a better relationship with food, and like I say, something that ultimately enables you to do this unconsciously. But let me tell you something, and I'm going to finish with this. This is a little bit of a hard truth, but I think it's worth you hearing if you've got to this stage of the video. Just like if you have a salary target in mind or a new car that you want to buy, nothing changes when you hit that target. There's no parade. No one really cares. The glory is in the process, not the outcome, because this is an infinite game. What happens when your 8-week diet is over? What happens when you reach your target weight? I promise you, no one is going to care apart from you. And that's fine. Like I said, this is a hard truth, but it's not the diet that makes the man. It's the process. Just enjoy the process, because this game, it never ends. If you'd like my help calculating your calories and how much protein you should be eating so that you can start burning fat today, then you can go ahead and click the first link in the description that's underneath this video and use my completely free calorie calculator. It's going to give you total peace of mind that you're on the right path and eating the right amount. And it's only going to take you 30 seconds to do it. Plug in your basic info, so your age, your weight, your height, your sex, and how active your lifestyle is. And then I send your personalized recommendations straight to your inbox. Anyway, I'll leave the video here. I really hope you enjoyed it. But more importantly, as always, I hope you found it useful and I hope you learned something new. Until the next time, cheers.